I made a video previously doing a breakdown of his kit and many core aspects of Qiuyuan. I then paired it with what I expect of him and outlined that there are many things that still need to be done and tested, and that I'll be back with findings that will be interesting and different. I forgot to add this, but also incorrect things that I may have found too. That's what this video is. I will copy and paste the kit breakdown, but beyond that, the goal here is to offer new information that's not literally just any other guide repeating itself. Here's what I will be showing you. A pasted video going over his kit so we all get how he works, some updates on that previous video, a newer kit technique, echo revival, some miscellaneous details, and a unique style of play he may give credence to. I'll end it by lastly going over my thoughts for this very early and still limited time I've had with him. As per usual, timestamps are there for you, so if you know how his kit works or just want my thoughts, skip to the parts that are listed in the timeline and in the description. But hear me now, I want to disclose first off that I am not a theory crafter. My goal usually with characters is to offer different information and perspectives that aren't typically given by others. Sometimes it's optimizing stuff like Chang Li's quick skill technique or Zha's jump cancel, and other times it's just different approaches that are fun or unique in how to play the game. I don't view Wuthering Waves through only a single lens, and I want to have fun first and foremost. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. In damage, how do you get those things? Qiuyuan's goals for kit function aren't too hard. It's a simple fill up his gauge to reach an enhanced state and use a special attack. You fill up his gauge, aka Swordster Soliloquy, which I will just be calling Soliloquy, by doing the last basic of his normal attack string, dodge counterattacks, or intro skill. The normal and dodge counterattack give 100 soliloquy or half a bar, while his intro gives 400 soliloquy or 2 bars. Each segment of the bar is considered 200 soliloquy, and they add different boons to both Qiuyuan and the party. Bar 1 enhances Qiuyuan with Thus Spoke the Blade Inkwash, and it changes his basic string into a 4-string combo with higher scalings. Bar 2 gives Qiuyuan and the party a 30% echo skill damage buff for 30 seconds. Bar 3 puts you in the Ink Splash Mind state and changes your heavy attack. You're given 8 seconds in this state, and it's indicated by this white bar underneath, as well as the world changing and sound cue.
Hold this blade. Your life is mine to take.
This activates immediately and means you have 8 seconds to use his full Forte, where you go down the bar to perform the attacks, to teach, to save, and to sacrifice in that order. There's more to his... Let's touch base on the updated details from the past video. One of the things I was unsure about was how his crit damage buff works on his liberation. On paper, it read as essentially a passive thing that is given out to all members with no conditions to meet outside of the crit rate minimum for max crit damage, which is 65% crit rate. I can tell you that his liberation must be used for it to activate. When this crit damage buff is given though, it is only for the active characters. This means that characters like Zha and her coordinated attacks, or Frolova and Hecate will not be getting the crit damage buff while they are off field. Similarly, if you swap to a unit, they get it, but it will not persist once you swap out. While disappointing and kind of weird due to how it was written, this could have been worse. It's still a very strong buff, and its thresholds are stupidly easy to reach. For most typical rotations, you'll still be getting it and utilizing it a majority of the time. Another thing up in the air was if other sources of crit rate buffing would calculate into the crit damage transfer after his liberation. Turns out that yes, it does. So what does that mean? It means that the Windward Pilgrimage set is a very good option for Qiuyuan, because not only is the set generally good, it pairs well with Chakona or any other future erosion character, and it allows him to run 10% lower crit rate while still being able to meet that 30% crit damage transfer. This idea is also consistent with Shorekeeper's 12.5 crit rate buff at stage 2 of her liberation, which means Qiuyuan's crit rate can be even lower if you're willing to do that.
Mandate calls. Judgment falls.
The divinity made to see the future of the world.
Additionally, this is great news too because it means any future echo stat or character which incorporates a crit buff will work with Qiuyuan. This allows him more flexibility as a whole, and it makes his future brighter than what we can only see at this current state of the second half of 2.7. The only thing that doesn't work is the Somme Noir sword because that crit rate buff goes away after swapping off of him. An update to his playstyle too is that yes, you can swap off to others while his Ink Splash Mind state is active. Now, it's not the best idea for damage if you're worried about that because it goes by so quickly, but I'd rather have it be possible and maybe not viable than just totally not possible at all because of it going away on swap. One other big thing none of the guides I've watched have mentioned is his second Forte bar echo buff. They just say it buffs echoes by 30% and then moves on. There's a little more to it, and I mean this in a bad way. Much like his Liberation crit buff, it is another active resonator type case. That means if you're swapped off or you swap off early, you will not be buffed. That means the echoes you typically use, like the Nightmare variant of Inferno Rider for example, or others where you can swap while having the attack finish, shouldn't be getting that buff, which fucking blows. If you made it to this section of the video, it means you want Qiuyuan's ink wash either on you or in you. Don't worry, I've got you covered. This is courtesy of the Qiuyuan subreddit since they are the ones who found this out, but I found it from FrostDice6 on Twitter. They credit this subreddit. Whoever it is, thank you. I'd like to give you this.
I don't really want this.
This technique takes advantage of a previous thing I said in that pre-release video. His first Forte bar, or this attack, has higher scaling, so you want to get that out at minimum if you're short on his Ink Splash Mind timer. There is a way you can continue to use this multiple times, which in theory makes him do way more damage. You can only do this 3 times per each Forte segment, so you're not technically locked to performing the attacks in descending order. There's 3 main ways you can perform this. Dodge to plunge is the first way. You cancel the bamboo stand by dodging, then plunging afterwards to get down. You then just repeat this. Heavy Forte, dodge, plunge, and repeat. Glide to plunge is the second way. It's the same concept except you're switching out the dodge for a jump which pulls out your glider. So it's heavy Forte, jump, plunge, repeat. I have been using this method and it's a smidge quicker because you're closer to the ground. The dodge pops you up and you gain extra height on the plunge, which adds time. Pressing jump cuts the momentum and you only get the height from the plunge.
Let's not linger.
The last way is a bit more complicated and it requires 2 things from you, being aware of your skill timer and the Echo Glacio Dreadmane. Glacio Dreadmane comes from the Moonlit set and you can either use a full set for a full-on support role or you can use a 2-piece for energy regen with his Law of Harmony set. Here's how this can be done. You heavy Forte, hold your skill and attack the target to immediately get to the ground, use your second heavy Forte, then use the Glacio Dreadmane to get to the ground quickly again. Then use his last heavy Forte attack. Glacio Dreadmane is one of the few echoes that can be used while in air as a transform echo. You get a very nice damage boost when using it in air, and it fulfills the more difficult part of quickly putting Qiuyuan back on the ground. The trade-off is your main echo is being used for this, and you're losing some stats. But what you gain from this is the Glacio Dreadmane doing a nice burst of damage that's getting bucked by Qiuyuan, while also synergizing gameplay-wise with his kit. Whichever method you use or don't, you should know about this technique for better understanding of Qiuyuan. So, you may be wondering, is doing all of this even worth it? Well, this comes with caveats or trade-offs you need to be aware of if you're planning to utilize this for damage. First thing is that this is the slowest of the 3 attacks you do in his Forte. That means you're open to getting hit a lot and blasted off since you're in the air, unless you have his sequence, but you'll still be taking damage. The second thing is that the other 2 attacks give benefits of their own and you forgo them if you don't use them, namely his second attack bringing you quickly down to the ground, making it safer for you to dodge, and his last attack giving you the big 30 concerto, fulfilling his role as a quick concerto unit. Third, it can take a lot of stamina because of the dodge and plunge if you opt in to use that method. There can also be just general user error as well, and I experienced that a bit with the jump and more complicated version. Now, I know, it sounds like a lot of negatives, and you would be right. This is something I don't see a majority of you using on purpose. This is something that needs more deliberation, focus, and patience, and those 3 things are lacking in today's day and age. But the reason I relay this to you is because this again is a powerful attack. It's a pathway for more damage if you're wanting to use him as a main DPS, which I know is highly desired. I didn't mention this too, but it also groups enemies, so it works well for down bosses and for groups of enemies like in Whimpering Waste. If you also have him at sequence 3, which is the ideal stopping point for dupes, you'll be doing stupid damage because of the 600% increase you get from it on his Forte attacks. You may by accident do this too, so knowing what you did helps you understand his kit better. Since he's not been out a long time, literally less than a week, proper testing of this method for big meta related stuff is sort of up in the air. At least from the testing that I've done, these 3 heavy attacks do more damage than the typical path, but you must keep the previously mentioned caveats in mind because your DPS loss will be significant if you cannot successfully pull this off. The easiest way to ensure this is with interruption resistance, shields, or ideally getting his first sequence. But remember, you can still die. I've been generally opting for only 2 of the 3 heavy Forte attacks and ending with his plunging one. It's a nice middle ground of increasing his damage and still playing it safe. If you're focused and utilize this at the right opportunities, his roll does a little more damage than what people may have given him credit for. Qiuyuan is a character that currently is the only one to leverage echoes in a more unique way. Instead of having echo damage built in as the main type of damage you deal like Galbrena and to an extent Frilova, Qiuyuan gives a different idea. He gives massive buffs to his echo related damage sources while also giving consistent echo buffs to active teammates and a huge one when you take all of his shit into consideration. You'll be ranging from at least 20 to 30% echo damage for all teammates, but in practice tend to naturally hit at minimum 46 to 66%. The 66% is considering his weapon, pretty easily for the active characters. At its max, when combining all sources, it equals to a 96% to 116% buff, albeit only for the active person being introed in from Qiuyuan. This idea made me re-look at echoes as a whole, and this is what I did. I made a goddamn table of echoes that I listed who would take the most advantage of these buffs. The one interesting thing I found was that Qiuyuan makes old transforming echoes way better. The reason is because of the total damage these echoes do and them having lower cooldowns. For example, Dreamless on Havoc Rover, Inferno Rider, and Thundering Mephis are some of the strongest echoes in total damage. Dreamless offers 811% total damage when used properly with Havoc Rover, Inferno Rider offers 808% total damage, and Thundering Mephis offers 884% total damage. These numbers obviously are going to skyrocket with Qiuyuan's buff, and they have lower cooldowns at 20 seconds compared to the Nightmare ones that tend to sit at around 25 seconds. Nightmare Crownless is the only other notable standout among the other Nightmare Echoes because of the 12-second cooldown and 3 charges he offers, giving a total of 899% total damage. Now, all echoes will benefit, so I'm not telling you to forego the stat stick you have now, but these specifically older echoes now hold more weight because they will be dishing out heavier damage. In cases like Thundering Mephis, it thrives in single target battles because you're not thinning that 884% damage across many enemies. However, Dreamless by contrast just thrives in virtually any condition and will just do a lot of damage in a nice area. Just make sure to stay on her to benefit from all the buffs. buffs. I point this out because ever since Nightmare Echoes landed in our crotch, the normal versions have been demoted to either watching us get down with the Nightmare versions or being relegated to more specific kinks. Brent or Encore, for example, technically benefit more from the OG Inferno Rider compared to the Nightmare version because of the fusion and basic attack buff. Qiuyuan allows these transforming echoes to be more worth the transforming caveat that naturally comes with them. It helps offset that bit of time in their form through powering up their strikes. Hell, even if you don't have his weapon giving you that extra 20% buff, you're still doing close to double damage when using the Echo, and that I think is worth something. There's also one more 1.0 main Echo that I think is worth the attention. It's Shang Liao's best friend, Pascar, or the Mech Abomination. This Echo set is still one of my favorites, as unpopular as that may be, and the biggest reason is because of this Echo. It is extremely unique because this is, I believe, the only Echo that still has quadratic scaling. This makes it stupidly powerful in high density areas and modes. Add in a heavier grouper paired with Qiuyuan's massive buffs to echo damage, and the Mech Abomination will be doing high numbers on top of being literally one of the easiest and fastest echoes to deploy still. The only drawbacks are that it's on lingering tunes, which is more universal, typically lowering the damage output on the unit, and it also has a low resonant energy recovery stat, which makes it not ideal for characters that want their liberations. But for me, I use this Echo set a lot, and so knowing that this will be hitting even harder makes me hornier than the snack daddy himself.
Don't let your kids what's it?
Now, to remind you again, I am not a theory crafter, and my goals aren't only what is optimal. But look, damage is damage, and in some cases these buffs may be some people's threshold from 2-starring to 3-starring or reaching their new goals. Also, if you're in a good position with your account, finding new ways to play is more fun than maximizing a 0.5 faster clear time, in my opinion at least. So knowing stuff like this is more valuable than just straight meta damage stuff. Let's hit on some of the miscellaneous tidbits. You all may know this, but holy ovaries, his auto counter from his idol after basic 1 or heavy attack is absolutely the sickest thing in this game. The invincibility on his heavy attack is also fucking awesome, and his skill also giving invincibility if you time it right and slowing the enemy. Dude, his kit is so dope. Use these things. It has more practical uses than you think outside of style. At the very least, his heavy attack and skill do because they link into things. But using his idol to auto counter during some fights gives you basically a one-way get out of jail free card. In scenarios where you're trying out something more complicated, not in a usual rotation style, or you're bad at timing big charge-up attacks, the moments knowing you have a guaranteed dodge gives a nice breather before you're back in the bamboo. His skill is the thing I talked about in the past video too, and I was partially right. His hold skill can miss on fast-moving units or teleporting ones. However, Qiuyuan chases the fuck out of things, or in some cases, nothing. But more often than not, you'll be hitting your marks. I feel like his hold is personally more fluid than his tap because it's a little less jittery and has a smoother move forward that feels farther even if you're in range. But I think it depends on literally where he is because he does move around like a rat on acid. Such is the price for looking sexy, I guess. So what was that new playstyle thing that I mentioned in the beginning? To those who care about if this is a new meta thing, no, it's not. You can now move on, unless you want to hear my reasoning, process, and thoughts on why I even tried this. Since 2.4's introduction of Kelpie, we could have been using this since then, but its use wasn't ever really considered. Sort of, up until now. This style is more fun and experimental than meta, at least from what I can tell. But it could be something to think about in the future as we may get more echoes of these styles. So let me explain and walk you through my thought process and findings. There are currently 2 echoes that provide intro and outro damage instances, False Sovereign and Kelpie. These naturally do echo damage. Now upon my gallivanting with different approaches to utilizing our wuxia sex symbol, I found that there is a huge potential with these echoes. until I tried it with Kelpie and realized that it doesn't get the full buffs due to the active resonator condition. It still gets a bit of a buff at around 36% via Law of Harmony and Qiuyuan's sword, but Kelpie's outro attacks will not gain the other benefits from Qiuyuan because you are exiting off that resonator. However, Dark Tide Daddy Whispers does get the benefits, and I mean the full 116% echo buff upon intro. So my framework idea was to have Qiuyuan as a quick concerto unit using Kelpie to outro into a character that would heavily buff that intro attack done by Full Sovereign and still marginally utilize the set. The third unit would need to be one who has quick concerto gains too to help feed into the constant intro and outro loop, hitting enemies with bigger bursts of echo damage that at base is hitting for 405% damage. Now I'm sure some god player out there can make this work in a much smoother and more viable way, but for me whose highest bar is can it get the jobs done? Well, in endgame stuff, it's lacking for big obvious trade-offs. You're really relying on the echo damage to be doing enough supplementation for the damage you're taking out from maximizing the usual best in slot things. It's also hindering the entire kit of units for literally one single aspect of meaty echo damage through intro and outros. My first thought was to try it on Calcaro holding False Sovereign, who I'm absolutely no expert in, but I built him and I tried to synergize things with the Crown of Valor and a 2-piece Electro set. I chose him because he has a focus on intro damage through his special Necessary Means intro after Liberation. This doubles into intro damage with his special along with a buffed up False Sovereign. To put it bluntly, this shit sucked though, and it was like opening old wounds then pissing in them because of feeling how goddamn laggy Calcaro is. I also just suck, so that's another thing, but Calcaro is a special kind of pain. In short, I think others should try out using these intro and outro echoes with Qiuyuan synergy and see if maybe you can do better than I. I'm just baffled mostly by Kelpie literally having little to zero place in any kind of set, and Kelpie's been obtainable since 2.4. Kelpie's main role until this idea has been a stat stick for my Cartathea's 44111 build on her. The experiment was a marginal failure, but I had expectations of that because it's offset and wildly niche. It succeeded though in doing a little bit better than I expected in certain scenarios, but Calcaro proved the weakest link due to specifically his low concerto gains and his still clunky nature. I'll continue trying to work it out since there must be a reason for these echo types, and I feel like Qiuyuan is one or the main key for them. To answer the common question, he's partially worth it. For what he is as a fast concerto unit, I expected his damage to be middling a bit, but as I've said many times, there's more than just damage. He offers unique utility as I laid out with the transforming echoes and intro-outro niche playstyle, and universal crit damage buff for active members. His gameplay is also unique, easy to get, sexy as hell, and makes you feel like a badass. Power-wise though, his personal strength is one that is relatively limited at base. Without the usual suspects of either Frolova or Galbrena, power or value is more difficult to obtain out of him if that's your biggest concern. Yuno would also be another I'd throw in because she fills both the damage, healing, and heavy buffer role, and I think she's one of the bread and butter units for Qiuyuan. You have to work pretty hard for squeezing water out of his bamboo, and by that I mean damage that is matching dedicated damage dealers. But I think it's stupid to downplay him by sort of unfairly having him be compared in a role he literally wasn't made for. Outside of that though, he specifically has glaring flaws that you'll feel if you want to just autopilot certain things or stick to rotational styles of play. Without his sequence 1, you will be interrupted more than your family members barging into your room while masturbating.
Yo, come on, man, I can't have shit in this house!
I'd honestly say that his sequence 1 is worth Coral if you have it just for the resistance alone, because I was getting super annoyed always getting thrown off during any part of his Forte. Additionally, his playstyle may be just too much for some people. He's very mobile in all parts of his kit, and sometimes the camera in my experience can just not adjust well, which makes playing him a bit of a hassle. His Forte is one that is not within your total control either, because the timer starts once it's filled. Most units give you the power for when you want to use their Forte. Qiuyuan doesn't give that to you, so you need to be more aware of how much Forte he has. The last main flaw that I tended to find was that energy regen was a rather consistent problem for me. You need to invest in it more than you think, and many of the guides that I've seen make it only a small footnote of his guide. This makes the 2-piece or full moonlit set or 2-piece tidebreaker an actual decent option if you're lacking in the energy side of things. If you don't get it up, you'll be killing your flow on the field and also losing the strongest buffing aspect of his kit in his liberation crit damage buff. Make sure to have enough energy. Whatever decision you make though, I hope I helped in providing more insight on Qiuyuan that was both different and helpful. I'd appreciate a like and a sub, thank you for letting me take your time, and be safe out there.
Beneath endless mountains, all who have met must part.